Hello everybody, in this video I'll be painting a squig. Since squig isn't that difficult of a model, I decided to add a couple more layers to certain areas and to take a bit more time in painting this model. I start off using a base coat of Chaos Black through a rattle can. You can use any primer you basically want. Then I paint the entire model using dark flesh tone, as you could just see. Once that's dry, I make a mixture of 1 part dark flesh tone and 3 parts gory red, and I paint over all the dark flesh tone, meaning that the dark flesh tone only is serving as a base color for the next mixture to grab on and to sit on, and it saves time not having to paint this in 4 or 5 layers. Next I wash the entire model using Drucci Violet, and this layer is to make sure that all the shading gets into place later for the process of painting. Once the Drucci Violet is dry, I'm gonna start building up the highlights, and I start using a coat of gory red, and I make sure I stay away from the deepest recesses and I nearly paint in the rest of the model. Next I make a mixture of 1 part gory red and 1 part bloody red, and with this mixture I start to reinforce the previous highlight. I make sure I leave a little bit of that previous highlight visible, and I just continue to build up the color. In certain areas where I felt the need for it, I decided to go over it a couple of times just to strengthen the pigment in that specific location. Next I add 1 part bloody red to this mixture, making it a 1 part gory, 2 part bloody red mixture, and I continue the process of building up the colors. Again, I make sure I leave small parts of the previous layer visible and just continue to make the red more vibrant. Next, again, using the same principle of painting, I use pure bloody red, and I build the colors up a bit further. And as you can see, I focus on the top side of all the small parts I'm painting. Then I make a mixture of 1 part bloody red and 2 parts hot orange, and I continue highlighting the model. This time I make sure I stay on the most upper parts of every area that I'm painting, and I leave little bits of the previous layer visible once again. And I finish the red parts off using pure hot orange, and I focus this on the little bumps the model has, the little, let's call them pustules. They're not pustules, but I don't know, the warts. Let's call them warts. And I apply this around the mouth as well to make these areas stand out a bit more. And then I use dark sea green and I paint it in the base. I just smeared it on there. Since it's an airbrush paint, you don't need to thin it down. It's thin on its own, and just make sure it's on there. Next, using turquoise, I paint in the eyes, and I'm sorry for my hair that wanted to have some time on camera as well. And once that's dry, I use Adriatic blue, and I paint the eyes again, but leaving a little bit of the turquoise on the edges visible. And this is then followed by a small dot of dead white in the corner of the eye. Next I used hex leaching and I painted in the gums on the model. I made sure not to go over the red parts, obviously. Then using medium sea gray, I dry brush the base. I just go over the entire base and make sure there's some light effects in there now. Then I use gray and I do this again, but this time I stay on the outer sides of the model, or the base, to make sure that there's more like a shadow beneath the model and the light surrounding the model. In that manner you get the appearance that the light's coming from above, and that's what we're looking for. Next I use earth and I block in all the bone parts. It's not that much on this model, just the bone and the nails on the feet. Then I use Agrax Earthshade and I wash those bone parts and the nails. As far as the painting process for the bone, on the nails you can easily skip a couple of these layers if you don't want to do that many layers. Whilst I was painting the bone, I just went along and painted the nails as well. Once the earth shade's dry, I take earth and I'm going to start building up the first highlight on the bone. I make sure I leave a little bit of the previous layer visible as usual and stay away from the deepest recesses. I then make a mixture of 1 part earth and 1 part bone white, and I start building up the bone color on the bone parts. And again, I make sure I leave a little bit of the previous layer of earth visible to start working on a little bit of a transition on the bone parts. I then move on to pure bone white, and I repeat this process following the same principles as before. And on these larger bones you can easily paint in your own lines to create more shadow effects if you like to do that. And to finish the bone off, I make a mixture of 1 part bone white and 1 part dead white. And I focus on the top of the bone parts and on the outer edges of the bone part by just reinforcing the highlights there. Next I made a mixture of 3 parts hex leaching and 1 part warlord purple, and I use this mixture to basically give the gum a rough highlight. And the only thing I make sure of that I don't get into the deepest recesses of the gum, to leave that the pure hex leaching we painted on earlier. And once this coat has been applied, I add 2 parts elf skin tone to the mixture, and now I start building up the highlight color. I make sure I leave a little bit of the previous layer visible once again, and I just build it up towards where the light should be hitting the model. I then add 2 more parts of skin tone to the mixture, and I repeat this process, and this time I make sure I stay away from the lips so that the previous layers will be visible around the lips, and working towards the teeth the gum will get a bit lighter. And for the final layer I add 2 parts dead white to this mixture, and I just highlight the small points, triangular points between the teeth now. And then it was on to painting the actual teeth themselves. I started off using a coat of beastie brown, and I tried to make sure I left a little bit of the dark flesh tone in between the teeth visible. Next I made a mixture of 1 part beastie brown and 1 part leather brown, and I applied this as a highlight. I start on the pointy end of the teeth and I work my way down over the teeth, and I stay away from the bottom of the teeth. This is then followed by a next highlight following the same method of pure leather brown. I then make a mixture of 1 part leather brown and 1 part dead flesh, and I continue highlighting the teeth by constantly staying on that same method, same principle, by building up the color, leaving little bits of the previous layer visible, and in that manner creating a transition of color. I then add 1 more part dead flesh to the mixture, and I repeat the process. And to finish it off, I use pure dead flesh on the tips of the teeth, just to reinforce the color a little bit there, and that already finishes up the model before I apply a dull coat. So after applying a dull coat, I apply a little bit of gloss varnish to the gums and the eyes, just to make it shine and give it a little bit of a wet appearance, and then the model is done. And as you can see right now, this is the end result. All in all, this was a really fun model to paint, and it wasn't that difficult to paint as well. So I hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe if you want to. And see you next time. Bye bye.